We're going to have a great discussion about some words that you don't normally hear together, privacy-focused product design. But first, by way of introduction, Megan, why don't you DuckDuckGo has been around for over 10 years.
DuckDuckGo has been around for over 10 years.
But for those folks who don't know what it is, tell us.
So who out here has heard of DuckDuckGo? That's a great show of hands. So DuckDuckGo is a private search engine. It's just like Google, except we don't track you. And we're most well known for the search engine, but if you download our extensions and apps, we also protect you where you go elsewhere on the internet. We block tracking cookies, we upgrade to HTTPS, and so forth. We make money by contextual ads, and we make a ton of money.
Ooh.
We don't make money from the really creepy, personalized, targeted ads. We're a privately held company, so I can't tell you exactly how much we make, but we are subject to the California new privacy law, which requires at least $25 million annually, and we're well above that.
And your website says your data shouldn't be for sale. Andrew, very similarly, Density.io, your website says improve the security, efficiency, and productivity of your spaces without violating privacy. Tell us quickly, what does that mean?
So we build a sensor, the company's called Density. We build a sensor that can tell you how many humans are in any space, building, or room in real time anywhere in the world.
So a video surveillance camera with facial recognition.
It is not a camera. We actually build the product as an anti-camera. The product anonymously counts entrances and exits and then turns that into essentially occupancy data or utilization data. Whole thing's laser-based, and we have no idea who you are.
Okay. Liz, strongDM is a little bit different. You're basically selling privacy and security into enterprises. Tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yeah, we're on the governance side of things. So show of hands, anybody in this room not make decisions based on data today? Nobody. So companies today make data-driven decisions. More data, more people need access to more information in more places in order to do their job. StrongDM provides a way for companies to implement controls so they understand who has access to what, and then audit what employees and contractors are doing when they're accessing that information.
So you guys have all brought sort of privacy-minded businesses into the marketplace. In a world where the companies that collect information, that surveil our spaces, that track us across the web do quite well. So Liz, to start with you, has it made the commercial path, more difficult?
I think it's made it front and center, right? You hear about data breaches in the news today. Privacy is top of mind for everybody, whether you are a consumer and you're wondering how can I, the people, sort of lock down who has access to my information. And then we, the builders, thinking about how we honor the fact that we have all of this information coming in. It's just top of mind for any board of directors today.
And Megan, you guys have done well, but I'm going to hazard a guess that Google probably makes a little more money, right, by collecting.
Teeny,
so what do
you
you sacrifice by being pure when it comes to privacy?
Well, I don't think we sacrifice anything. I think the sacrifice is experienced by the users who are encountering Google in so many facets of their life and use Google by default because it's set as the default in their phone and computers and so forth, but it's not really a trade-off. I think the search experience is just as good on DuckDuckGo, and it's not a matter of saying, oh, I want to protect my privacy, therefore I'm going to have a less optimized experience.
And Andrew, I'm sure you're selling into venues, to companies, maybe to public spaces. Okay, I'm gonna guess that they say, your laser's really cute, that's great, but we want the video surveillance, we want to see the faces. That's useful data to us. So, what are you sacrificing by taking a privacy-minded approach as you roll out Density?
Well, I think we do have cute lasers, I think is maybe to begin with, but we deploy into spaces where people have a reasonable expectation of privacy. So corporate offices, conference rooms, cafeterias, data centers. We're deploying into spaces where the corporation doesn't want a third party watching its employees. And I also think that I would like to live in a world where I have a reasonable expectation of privacy and I can wander around not feeling like my whereabouts or location are always tracked. So I don't know that I would say cameras don't have a place. I think cameras do have a place. I think facial recognition has a place. I just think that in many circumstances, and especially inside buildings, there's a better solution.
Do you put Easy Pass or whatever the New York equivalent is in your car?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah. So that would be like me being totally okay with somebody tracking me.
Yeah.
That
Liz,
is easy. I mean, that's pretty easy.
Right. Liz, it's interesting. You're in your previous life, your last company, you actually were sort of on the other side of this, right? Media Armor. My memory of it is, you created customer profiles across their devices, for like customers like retailers. What did you learn through that experience? What are you doing differently now?
Yeah, that was fascinating. So we created cross-device consumer profiles, so we would integrate directly with retailers. I will name them unnamed. And we would know who any consumer was on any device that they owned, be able to track them to an in-store purchase, and then deliver advertising to them. And so it was an advertising play, is how can we take the CRM that advertisers had and deliver messages that would make them even more money. And what ended up happening, actually, so what did I learn from that? So it was done in a privacy-compliant fashion. It's a very general term. And then the company got acquired, and actually the company that acquired it had a massive data breach. There was a whole bunch of information that was put into a database, and it wasn't secured properly. And 100 million MAC addresses actually leaked out, and the company went under after 2 FTC consent decrees. And strongDM was born out of that data breach. It was, if a big data company can't even manage how to secure information, then what are the rest of us going to do? And so we took a step back and said, from a governance perspective, if we are going to collect data, how do we do it in such a way that we know who has access to what, that we make it easier to lock down information, and able to monitor what employees are doing with it, so that if they're doing something nefarious, you get to lock it down.
Was the leak internal, the breach? Did it originate internally?
Somebody didn't secure the database internally, but a hacker got in, and actually the MAC addresses are out on the internet today.
Wow, and were those MAC addresses that Media Armor had collected, or was it it
was the acquirer.
Acquiring company, okay. Megan, I'm tempted to kind of ask, do people really care about privacy? I know we talk about it a lot at conferences like this one, and obviously,
yes,
legislators
talk
about it.
Stop you right there.
They do.
We care about privacy.
And by the way, before you answer, get ready we're going to vote on this, so open up the app, Bloomberg, STYT.com, but continue.
Well, I think they do care about privacy. I don't know anybody who doesn't care about privacy. It's a question of what is the friction involved with being able to educate yourself, being able to take the time to change your search engine or to have a tracker blocker installed. There's so much. We're busy. We're busy raising our family and taking care of our ailing parents. And I think that's where government has a role, is because it shouldn't be this hard.
Okay, we're going to get to the government role, but now let's ask the audience, how often do you take privacy into account in your decisions about personal technology? And I'm a huge hypocrite because my house is littered with Alexas. My wife walks around unplugging them, so I'm probably in the rarely category, but let's see, after I've made that personal admission, if you guys are going to be more forthright. I think we've got a
good Lord.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
I think
that's positive, right? Okay, so 50% for sometimes. And Megan, we were talking a little bit, I was asking earlier about what what the compromises are, but we were talking about commercially. What about, one of the benefits of these companies that track us across the internet is that they can personalize their services for us. So, and we'll start with you, but what do we lose in a privacy-protected world in terms of, the internet being customized? So
you don't have that pivot point with search, but you do have it in many other places. For example, I use an iPhone, and I would really like it so that when I click on a tweet that links to one of your stories, it takes me directly there, and I'm signed in. I don't have to remember my password. So there's lots of reasons why there should be some transfer of personal information from one company to another, so that your experience online is more facilitated. But with search, it doesn't need to be that way. We really do not need to know that after you've searched for little black dress and then you search for lipstick, we don't then need to start showing you ads for
following
birth
you
control.
around the internet.
Right.
Yeah. I looked recently at an ad for like a new store where you throw axes, you know, like it's a new entertainment.
You get rid of your aggression.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I don't know. And I swear to God, I've been followed around, I've been stalked by the axe throwers across the internet.
Yep.
But you're saying...
And that's only what you see. I can assure you there's a lot more behind the curtain that you're not seeing in terms of how you are being categorized with the searches that you've conducted.
Well, Andrew, the other great advantage of some of these products that aren't as privacy-minded is that there's a security benefit. So, for example, the Ring doorbells that people are installing, and Amazon is working with local law enforcement. Well, they talk about that as a sort of great organic neighborhood watch. Law enforcement can access some of these video cameras to identify culprits. Now, on your website, you talk about how the density products can prevent door tailgating. So you open the door, somebody sneaks in. Just to play devil's advocate, wouldn't it be great for the companies if they could not only prevent door tailgating, but then zoom in and identify who that person is?
Yeah, so what Brad's talking about is we stop something called tailgating, where you have an access-controlled door and two people go through, but only one badges in. It's extraordinarily hard to stop. It happens in roughly 40% of all entrances. It's mostly employees holding the door for other employees, so it's not nefarious. But actually, most people have tried with cameras. So cameras are actually terrible at counting people. The false positive rate is extraordinarily high. Oftentimes, facial recognition tends to fail for a variety of reasons. I imagine they'll get better, but we actually didn't try to sell that. Our customers just bought the system for that, and it is now, I'd say, at least 30% of our inbound. So yeah, I think we assign a lot of power to cameras that they don't yet really have, and yet at the same time, like, we don't really deal in bits. Like, we deal in atoms. Like, we're measuring people and their location, and I think it's a little bit of a different calculus when you're having a conversation about who that person is and where they've been or who they're with, what conversations they're having, than if you're being retargeted for axe throwing.
Do you think the law enforcement benefits of the surveillance cameras, of the Ring technology setups, are overstated?
No, not necessarily. And I actually think there are a number of really interesting companies that do neighborhood watch or neighborhood surveillance. And I think I don't know that I have a position on whether or not the driver who's going through a rich neighborhood should have a reasonable expectation of those rich neighbors, like taking photographs of their license plates or who they are, or identifying whether or not they're supposed to be there. I don't know that I have a position on that, but I can say, like, we are developing technology and deploying technology, not density, but we as a society are building technology that has serious downstream consequences if we don't manage them properly, which is why, like, I think governance is and tools like internal tools are, like, critically important to start thinking about now.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. We have GDPR in Europe. We have the California Consumer Privacy Act, and in terms of federal legislation, probably gridlock, right?
14 billion different privacy bills.
And you've sponsored some of them. Do not track.
So we didn't sponsor. What we did is we heard in Washington, D.C. and in various states, we need to have a general privacy law. And everybody was talking and talking and talking about this. And that's what they do. They talk. And what we would like to see is actual action.
Well, there is bipartisan support.
Well, it doesn't matter that there's bipartisan support unless there's an actual law passed and signed into an enforceable law. So everybody is bipartisan support for a concept, but we don't have bipartisan majority votes for a bill. And that's because passing a general privacy bill is really hard. It involves a lot of moving parts. It involves not just online, it involves florists, tattoo artists, and everybody's got their own trade group. So passing something is very difficult. So we wanted people, and still want people, to put that to the side. We'd still like it, but let's get something to protect people now. And there's an easy way to do that that gets you most of the way there, and that is a do not track law that says on your phones, everybody has a setting. And if you have that setting that says, don't track me, then the companies cannot track you. You have something similar. It's halfway there in terms of technical implementation. We know what the technical implementation is. We just need an enforcement mechanism, and that's a law.
Liz, coming from the online advertising world in your previous startup, how disruptive would a do not track bill be in that world?
I mean, today it's a suggestion, right? It's you either honor it or you don't. I think there's been talk for almost a decade now about it would just destroy all of online advertising today. I think some of that is a little bit of a bluff. I mean, there are lots of beautifully data-rich profiles out there with anonymized data. You can create roughly the same data set, whether you know that it's Liz the human or Liz the anonymous identifier.
By the way, Megan, actually, maybe this is a good one for you. I've always wondered, do the privacy modes, the incognito modes offered by a lot of browsers and search engines, do those work?
No, they don't. Stop, don't bother. So incognito mode, for example, keeps the data not on your phone, but it still goes to Google. So what are you using it for? Because you're not really worried about somebody coming up and grabbing your phone and then doing a forensic examination on your phone. That probably isn't your biggest concern, and if it is, then you've got bigger problems. Your problem is that you want to protect your privacy, and you generally want to protect it from going all over the world with Google and all of its affiliates and partnerships.
Okay. Andrew, returning to the legislation question, let's say the Senate gets serious about privacy lawmaking and you are called to testify and you have an opportunity to advocate on behalf of Congress. What is one message that you want to convey to lawmakers when it comes to potential privacy legislation?
No one's ever asked me that before. I think I'd probably talk maybe a bit about consent, which I think is a bit about, in order to destroy the online advertising model, all users would have to turn off, everyone would have to toggle the do not track thing. So Google could still make money on all the people that are not clicking that toggle.
Although right now, we did a study on this, and approximately 30 to 40% people already have that toggle switched on, even though it does nothing.
Yeah, yeah. There's a similar thing with location-based location tracking, where you actually, the off button doesn't turn it off. The off button just sort of suggests that it's been turned off. You have to do whatever. I think the point is, we're moving to we used to, I don't know does anybody remember when Gmail first came out? Can you raise your hand if Gmail beta, it was in beta for 10 years. So when Gmail first came out, it was this awesome trade. I think it was Paul Buchheit who was working on it. It was look, we'll serve ads that are contextual based on the text that's in your email. In exchange, however, we're going to give you a free email service that's way better and has way more storage. I think it was 1,000 megs or something like that. 10 years later, 15 years later, we're now having conversations about whether or not that data is having an impact on elections. Consent matters. And so not providing users an ability to understand how I can turn this off to opt out, I think is no longer okay.
Okay, Liz, last question to you. So the title of this panel was Privacy-Focused Design. You've started several companies now. Are the right incentives in place for entrepreneurs, among investors, investment banks, incubators, for entrepreneurs to think about privacy when they're starting companies?
Are the incentives?
Yeah, are the right variables? Is there pressure in the Silicon Valley community for entrepreneurs now to do the right thing?
Do you want me to get to raise my next round of funding? I think my job is to go as quickly as possible to win. As a CEO, as a steward of the company, as a member of the board of directors with all of my shareholders' interests at heart, I should be asking the question when the company gets built and posing the question to my CTO, how can we do this in such a way that honors the fact that people are people, that if I've got 100 million records in a database, that might be a data set, but that is 100 million unique humans. And so how do we honor that? How do we lock down who has access to it? How do we, for lack of a better word, watch what they're doing to make sure that they're honoring the same principles that I've implemented from the start? And so I think as a good steward of an enterprise, that is an ideal that we strive for. I don't know if it's necessarily baked into the venture capital route, but there you have it.
Also, did you see the Apple privacy ad?
Yeah.
They like turned their logo into a lock. Like I think the trillion-dollar companies are making money on privacy, or at least investing in privacy. There's no reason why big companies can't get started.
Well, that's a great place to end the discussion on. Liz, Megan, Andrew, thank you.